So yesterday we annotated this article, and so before you start what we're doing today with the questions, I do want you to finish annotating. So the video left off with pleading to save his daughter. So if you need to continue that, get that done first. And then the next thing that we're going to do is annotate the questions. Okay, so which may be new to you, or this may be something that you actually do more often. So fortunately, there's only 4 questions to this passage. That's good or bad. That's if the teacher's taking a grade on it, that means they're worth 25 points apiece. And that's a lot, so you want to get every single one correct so that you get a good grade on it, because you go from an A to a C if you miss any of them. But the good news is it won't take you very long. So our first question, question 1, and I know this isn't the best copy of it. Your copy should be clearer. The first one says, which section highlights the similarities between the Jewish refugees during World War II and the Syrian refugees today? So the first thing I want to encourage you to do is cover up the answer choices, okay? If you cover up the answer choices and you make a decision by yourself, before you look at the answer choices, you're not going to be tricked into doing something that's probably incorrect. Then the second thing is going to be to circle or underline the key words in the question. So what is it asking? So reading again, it says, which section highlights the similarities? Okay, similarities. Again, you can look this up if you need to. Use your dictionaries. Similarities are the same, okay, between the Jewish refugees during World War II and the Syrian refugees today, okay? And so I'm going to go back into the text, hopefully without really looking at the answer choices, and I'm going to see the sections. So this first section, okay, it talks about, does talk about similarities, but it kind of gets into more details. This first paragraph talks about the similarities, but then it details the Franks. So a little bit, but not too much. Policies carried a high cost for refugees. Okay. These rules were designed to protect the country. Some say that the Syrians were being kept out for the same reason. Okay. So that's same. Same. Okay, it actually even uses the same language. So I'm going to say this is a good option for number 1. Okay. Looking through it, it continues. The Germany's, the stories unfold in slow motion. Okay. But definitely that sentence is key. Pleading to save his daughters. Okay, Frank writing to old friends. The old friends kind of describing who they are and who they know. And then Nazi-occupied Germany talks about what Jews couldn't do. So there's nothing really in this section about Syrian refugees, okay? Changing immigration rules, keep foreigners waiting. And see, because I've already read it twice, this third reading, I'm not having to go through and read it carefully. I can, as I look at the paragraphs, I'm remembering what's in them. Meanwhile, American immigration rules are changing. U.S. government's making it harder. That's still in Nazi Germany in 1939. Otto Frank concluded. The Frank family went into hiding. Okay, so again, not talking about the Syrian. And then family perished despite efforts to escape, and that's the Frank family. So that's not looking at the Syrian. So now looking at the answer choices. Policies carried a high cost for refugees. Pleading to save his daughters, we said it wasn't that one. Changing immigration rules to keep foreigners waiting, not that one. Family perished, not that one. So really there were 5 sections, but this first section, the introduction, we said might be a contender, and then the second section was a contender. Well, when I look at the answer choices, only the second section is one of my answer choices. So that's my good choice. Number 2, which paragraph in the introduction, paragraphs 1 through 4, suggests that coming to America would have saved Anne Frank's life? Okay, so we know we're looking at paragraphs 1 through 4. I don't have to mess with the rest of the piece. And they're specifically asking about coming to America saving Anne Frank's life. Okay, and the introduction is the beginning. Okay, so I'll go back to the introduction, and if they haven't numbered my paragraphs, I'm going to number them. So I numbered my paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 4. Even though this is one line, it's a paragraph. In this case, there's no indentation, but the paragraphs are separated with spacing. Okay, so paragraph 1 talks about Obama, Syrian refugees. Paragraph 2, among those who tried. And I remember 3 and 4 kind of had this, because this is where I said the tone. This is where I wrote something about the tone, and it was the tone because they said Anne Frank could have lived. So let's read it specifically. Otto Frank survived the Holocaust, the mass killing and imprisonment of European Jews during World War II by the German Nazis. Brightman said that if immigration rules had been different, Anne Frank could be a 77-year-old woman living in Boston today, a writer. Instead, she died at the age of 15 in a German concentration camp. Okay, so I know it wasn't paragraphs 1 or 2. Okay, looking at paragraphs 3 and 4, which is the best answer? They do both talk about Anne surviving and living in Boston today, or instead dying in the concentration camp. So let's go back and see what that's asking. Which paragraph suggests that coming to America would have saved Anne's life? That's going to be paragraph number 3. All right, number 3, which statement best represents the central idea of the section pleading to save his daughter's life? So, okay, again, we're not going to look at the answer choices. We're going to make our own decisions. Best represents, and the central idea. Okay, central idea is not how my teacher talks about it. She says main idea. So don't be caught up in things like that. Central and main, close enough. So the central idea, the main idea of just the section pleading to save his daughters. So we're not looking at the whole thing. We're looking at the main idea of pleading to save his daughters. So we're looking at this section, and I didn't annotate this section, so I'm kind of in trouble now. This is where I told you why annotating is better than chunking and just writing summaries. Okay, on April 30th, 1941, Frank wrote to his old college. Okay, so we've looked at this again. We looked at this just a minute ago. So this was Frank writing the letter, and this is about the friend, and it mentions Eleanor Roosevelt and how they did everything they could to get the family visas, and they all failed. And then it talks about restrictions on Jews. Okay, could not be teachers or government officials, could not own businesses, their children went to special schools for Jews. The Franks were safe for the time being in the Netherlands, and Frank preferred to stay there. Then occupation to life as a refugee in a new country. Okay, so his choice to stay instead of going to a new country. So mostly the 2 out of the 3 paragraphs is about him contacting friends and people he knew in America, and then more about those. All right, so now let's look at the answer choices. So which statement best is the main idea? Even Eleanor Roosevelt was unable. So that's a detail that's in there. It's in the second paragraph, but it's just mentioned briefly in the second paragraph. Otto Frank decided that staying in the Netherlands was the best option since they couldn't move to the United States. That's in there in just the third paragraph. Although there were many restrictions on Jews at the time, Otto Frank felt his family was safe in the Netherlands. Detail. Okay, so these are all true, right? They're true. It's true, which makes us want to circle those answers. But if they're details, that's not going to be the central idea. Okay, it's just going to be a detail. So, despite the efforts of Otto Frank and several others in America, Frank family was not able to flee the United States. Okay, so despite the efforts of Frank, which was paragraph 1, and several others in America, which was paragraph 2, the Frank family was not able to leave the United States, which is paragraph 3. That's going to be my main idea. Okay? And I can prove it because I went through, I wrote it down. If I go back later and I'm second guessing myself, like some of you, when you go back over your work and you're like, oh, was that right? After you've read 3 or 4 other passages and you come back to this one.
Kayla, Martin, could